Good afternoon, I'm Leila Masimova and you're watching A News. Now, the major stories making headlines today. Carney's Liberals win the Canadian election and seal a remarkable comeback. U.S. President Donald Trump wants permanent ceasefire in Ukraine, White House says. Power gradually restored in Spain and Portugal after major blackout. Canada's Prime Minister Carney is on track to win the federal election according to early projections. His Liberal Party wins election after a campaign dominated by U.S. President Donald Trump's threats and economic pressure. However, it remains unclear whether Liberals will form a majority or minority government.
Millions of Canadians went to the polls on Monday in an election heavily influenced by US tariffs and President Donald Trump's controversial call for Canada to become the 51st American state. Voting officially ended across the country, from the Atlantic provinces to British Columbia, and counting quickly got underway.
All of you, Canada, get ready. Our CBC News...
Early results showed the Liberals leading in 90 seats, while the Conservatives were ahead in 64. A majority government requires winning 172 of the 343 seats in Parliament.
It is not yet clear at this hour.
The election marked a major comeback for the Liberals, who earlier this year had trailed the Conservatives by as much as 20 points. That changed following Justin Trudeau's resignation and Trump's intervention, which shifted the political landscape. Mark Carney, a political newcomer but internationally respected economist, became Prime Minister in March after succeeding Trudeau. He campaigned on promises of taking a tougher stance toward Washington and reducing Canada's economic dependence on the US, asking voters for a strong mandate. Meanwhile, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre focused his campaign on domestic issues such as the rising cost of living and crime, arguing that after 9 years of Liberal rule, Canada was broken. At the time, Parliament was dissolved. The Liberals held 152 seats, the Conservatives 120, the Bloc Québécois 33, the New Democrats 24, and the Greens 2. More than 7 million Canadians voted early, setting a record for advance turnout. However, final results could take longer to confirm, especially in key battlegrounds such as Ontario's 905 region and British Columbia, where polls closed later. Whether the Liberals secure an outright majority or must govern as a minority will depend heavily on these late results.
President Donald Trump is taking steps to ease pressure on U.S. automakers, unveiling plans to scale back some tariffs on important car parts. The move comes amid mounting industry concerns and ahead of his visit to Michigan.
U.S. President Donald Trump's administration is set to ease the impact of his automotive tariffs, announcing plans on Tuesday to reduce some import duties on foreign parts used in U.S. manufactured vehicles. The new measures aim to prevent overlapping tariffs on imported vehicles and provide relief for domestic automakers, many of whom had raised concerns about rising production costs. The move is seen as an effort to support American manufacturing while maintaining the broader goals of the administration's trade strategy. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick called the move a major victory for Trump's trade policy, saying it supports U.S. automakers and workers while encouraging domestic production. The announcement comes ahead of Trump's visit to Michigan, where automakers had anticipated relief amid concerns over rising costs from tariffs. The Wall Street Journal was first to report on the administration's move, which signals a shift toward more targeted tariff relief aimed at balancing trade enforcement with support for U.S. industry.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has declared a unilateral 3-day ceasefire in May in the ongoing war with Ukraine. The announcement comes as the White House confirmed that US President Donald Trump is pushing for a permanent end to the conflict. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said on Monday that the president believes now is the time to stop the fighting for good.
Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin.
The Kremlin declared a new unilateral ceasefire. Russian President Vladimir Putin, speaking at a meeting of the Council of Legislators in St. Petersburg, said that the 72-hour truce is set to begin at the start of 8th May and run until the end of 10th May. This date marks the 80th anniversary of the Soviet Union's victory alongside its allies in World War II. It follows an earlier, short-lived Easter ceasefire, which both sides accused each other of repeatedly violating. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha responded, saying Ukraine is ready to support a lasting, durable and full ceasefire. However, he stressed that if Russia truly wants peace, it should immediately halt its ongoing attacks. Ukrainian Foreign Ministry spokesman Georgy Tykhy stated that if Russia truly seeks peace, it should cease fire immediately.
Why wait until May 8th? If the fire can be ceased now, and since any date for 30 days, so it is a real ceasefire, not just one for a parade. And Ukraine is ready to support a lasting, durable, and full ceasefire. Of course, Ukraine's position is consistent, and we think that Moscow needs to be asked why they do not reciprocate the Ukrainian proposal, the Ukrainian acceptance of a full ceasefire, because if they accepted it, it could have already started, and we would have silence and, of course, some confidence-building measures, as Minister Sybiha repeats clearly many times, and this would pave the way to a real long-term settlement.
US President Donald Trump wants to see a permanent ceasefire to ending Russia's war in Ukraine. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said.
He is increasingly frustrated with leaders of both countries. He wants to see a permanent ceasefire. I understand Vladimir Putin this morning offered a temporary ceasefire. The president has made it clear he wants to see a permanent ceasefire first to stop the killing, stop the bloodshed. And while he remains optimistic he can strike a deal, he's also being realistic as well.
As of now, there are no signs of formal negotiations linked to the newly announced ceasefire, and the situation along the front lines remains tense.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Monday that the world did not want to wait until May 8 for Kremlin leader Vladimir Putin's announced ceasefire in the more than 3-year-old war only to be in effect for a few days. In his nightly address, Zelensky called for a full and unconditional ceasefire for at least 30 days to provide a basis for real diplomacy. Zelensky also said that an agreement with the United States in developing Ukraine's minerals had become stronger, more equitable after negotiations between the two sides. Power is gradually coming back across Spain and Portugal after a massive blackout triggered widespread disruption on Monday. While electricity has returned to many areas, the cause of the outage remains unclear as investigations continue.
Electricity supplies are slowly returning across parts of Spain and Portugal after a major, unprecedented blackout caused widespread chaos on Monday. The outage disrupted daily life for tens of millions of people across the Iberian Peninsula, halting subway trains, paralysing traffic systems, severing phone and internet connections, and shutting down ATM machines. By early Tuesday, over 87% of power had been restored in Spain, with all affected substations back online as residents cheered the return of electricity. Spain's Interior Ministry declared a state of emergency in several regions, including Madrid and parts of the south. Portugal's Prime Minister Luís Montenegro, following a late-night emergency cabinet meeting, declared an energy crisis. The outage disrupted key institutions like Spain's Parliament and the Madrid Open, while essential services in Portugal relied on backup generators. Police were deployed to manage traffic in cities where lights failed. Still, it remains unclear exactly what triggered the failure. Some reports linked the blackout to a rare, induced atmosphere vibration affecting Spain's power lines, but REN later denied these claims. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez, who visited Red Eléctrica's headquarters during recovery efforts, reiterated that there was no indication of a cyber attack and that the issue did not originate in Portugal.
What has caused this sudden disappearance of supply? This is something that specialists have not yet been able to determine, but they will. And the relevant state institutions and all private operators are working together to understand what has happened. All potential causes are being analysed. I insist again, without ruling out any hypothesis, any possibility.
Though the total number affected remains unclear, the blackout is one of the most severe to hit the Iberian Peninsula, home to around 60 million people. The full investigation into the origin of the outage remains ongoing.
The head of the UN nuclear watchdog emphasized the importance of his team's arrival in Iran for technical talks with nuclear experts and expressed his hopes that the discussions will allow the agency to monitor the country's nuclear program and ultimately prevent further conflict in the region. Speaking at the United Nations on Monday evening, Grossi called it a moment of enormous importance. Iranian officials confirmed that the technical team from the International Atomic Energy Agency had arrived on Monday in Iran to hold technical talks, including on safeguards. It follows IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi's visit to Tehran earlier this month and nuclear talks in Oman last week. Tensions are once again flaring between Pakistan and India following a deadly incident at the line of control in Jammu and Kashmir. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has called for immediate de-escalation, warning that the situation could worsen if not brought under the control. After a cabinet meeting in Ankara on Monday, President Erdogan urged both Pakistan and India to ease tensions as quickly as possible to avoid the risk of a more serious crisis. He emphasized Turkey's concern over the recent escalation and stressed the importance of dialogue to maintain regional stability. The call for calm comes after a deadly shooting on April 22 at the line of control in Jammu and Kashmir, resulting in the deaths of 26 tourists and injuries around 20 others. India has labeled the incident a terrorist attack and has placed the blame on Pakistan, further straining relations between the two nuclear-armed neighbors. A major international conference on Afghanistan concluded in Baku, where representatives from 20 countries discussed regional security and development, aiming to support Afghanistan's path to stability.
In Baku, officials from 20 countries gathered for the Afghanistan Regional Connectivity, Security and Development Conference, organized by Azerbaijan's State Security Service to discuss Afghanistan's future. Colonel General Ali Nagiev opened the conference, stressing its importance in building a stable, law-abiding Afghanistan. He highlighted Azerbaijan's long-standing support for international efforts to stabilize the country and combat terrorism and organized crime. The conference also underscored the need for global cooperation in addressing Afghanistan's challenges, from terrorism to illegal migration. The representatives shared a unified vision: Afghanistan's peaceful integration into the international community and the importance of joint efforts in promoting long-term stability.
Azerbaijan and Iran vote to deepen economic cooperation at a business forum held Monday at the Heydar Aliyev Center in Baku, attended by President Ilham Aliyev and Masoud Pezeshkian. President Aliyev hailed the visit as a success, highlighting the signing of a joint declaration aimed at strengthening bilateral ties. He called for greater trade investment and joint projects, noting that economic relations had not yet matched the strengths of political ties. More than 400 business representatives from both countries participated in the forum. Aliyev invited Iranian companies to contribute to major infrastructure projects in Azerbaijan. President Pezeshkian in his remarks emphasized the importance of regional cooperation, suggesting the creation of stronger transport and trade corridors linking Azerbaijan, Iran and neighboring countries. Both leaders stressed that strong economic and cultural ties would reinforce peace, security and prosperity across the region. Leaders and lawmakers from across NATO member states and partner countries are gathered in Turkey this week for an important seminar on security and economic challenges facing the Gulf, Middle East and the Sahel region. The event, organized by NATO Parliamentary Assembly's Mediterranean and Middle East Special Group, officially opened Monday in Antalya's Belak Tourism Center.
Thank you very much.
The NATO Parliamentary Assembly Mediterranean and Middle East Special Group's Economic and Security Commission seminar officially commenced Monday in Antalya's Belak Tourism Center. The three-day seminar brings together representatives from NATO countries, Azerbaijan, Gulf nations and Arab states to assess regional developments and their broader impact on NATO's security framework. Speaking to reporters, Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, chairman of the Turkish delegation to the NATO Parliamentary Assembly and former foreign minister, stressed Turkey's growing influence on the global stage.
Turkey has become an extremely important country in diplomacy and security, especially amid the rapid changes globally. Turkey remains an indispensable NATO ally and one of the top contributors. It is very important that the Western world has recently begun to understand Turkey's significance. But Turkey's importance should not only be acknowledged when needed, it should not be forgotten after the need disappears.
Batı dünyasının Türkiye'nin önemini anlamaya başlaması da
Çavuşoğlu criticized the Western partners for what he described as periodic neglect of Turkey's role after phases of close cooperation. He also cautioned against exclusionary approaches when discussing the future of Europe's security architecture. Highlighting Turkey's ongoing diplomatic efforts, Çavuşoğlu announced that next month Turkey will host a NATO foreign ministers meeting in Istanbul, chaired by Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, following high-profile events like the Antalya Diplomacy Forum.
Afghanistan is seeing fresh signs of international interest in its investment opportunities as both Indian and Russian private sector investors signal their eagerness to engage. Tamim Bahiz has more from Kabul.
Big powers set their sights on Afghanistan, identifying investment opportunities and perspectives for economic cooperation. During a high-level meeting in Kabul, the acting foreign minister of Afghanistan told officials from India's Ministry of External Affairs that conditions in Afghanistan are now favorable for investment. He invited Indian businesses to take part in Afghanistan's rebuilding efforts. Discussions also focused on boosting trade and transit ties and on easing visa procedures for Afghan patients, students and business people. Indian officials in turn expressed interest in investing in new projects and completing earlier ones, reaffirming India's commitment to its relationship with Afghanistan. Meanwhile, in the north of the country, private sector investors from Russia visited Balkh province, where they announced plans to invest $500 million to establish a major oil extraction plant in partnership with a local Afghan company. Provincial officials pledged a full cooperation to support the project. These developments highlight a growing confidence in Afghanistan's investment landscape as the country works to strengthen its economy and build new international partnerships. This is Tamim Bahiz in Kabul for A News.
Thanks for spending a moment with A News. Until we meet again.